Imagine breaking your leg or getting a toothache before the invention of aspirin, antibiotics, or even a basic bandage. How did our ancient ancestors survive a world trying to kill them without a single pharmacy in sight? Let's set the record straight right now. Life back then was basically an extreme survival reality show with zero commercial breaks. There were no doctors to call when you accidentally ate the wrong brightly colored berry. You either figured it out on the spot, or you became a permanent feature of the fossil record. But human beings are incredibly stubborn creatures. We didn't just roll over and perish. We adapted, learned, and found some truly wild, totally bizarre ways to heal ourselves. First, we have to talk about the ultimate prehistoric superpower that kept everyone alive. Your immune system. Ancient humans certainly didn't live in sterile houses completely wiped down with antibacterial soap. They lived in the dirt, ate whatever bugs they found, and shared their caves with wild animals. This constant, daily exposure to foreign germs meant their immune systems were working overtime. It was a brutal, unforgiving game of natural selection. If your immune system was weak, you simply didn't stick around long enough to pass on your genes. But for those who actually survived childhood, their bodies were built like impenetrable biological fortresses. Of course, a strong immune system won't magically fix a broken arm or cure a nasty parasite. That is exactly where nature's pharmacy enters the picture. Ancient humans were the original pioneering botanists. They didn't have fancy laboratories, but they had thousands of years of trial and error. A whole lot of error, unfortunately. Imagine being the brave first guy to figure out which mushrooms are medicine and which ones completely melt your brain. Thank you for your heroic sacrifice, Og. Over time, early humans discovered that chewing the bark of a willow tree could cure a splitting headache. Spoiler alert, willow bark contains the exact same active chemical ingredient that we put in modern aspirin. They also figured out that tightly packing a fresh wound with certain types of moss prevented nasty infections. Sphagnum moss is incredibly absorbent, highly acidic, and remarkably naturally antimicrobial. It was basically the prehistoric equivalent of wrapping yourself in a sterile, medicated gauze pad. Our ancestors also learned a ton of survival secrets by simply watching their furry neighbors. Animals have a deeply ingrained instinctual knowledge of how to properly heal themselves in the wild. If a sick, miserable caveman saw a bear digging up a specific pungent root and eating it, they totally took notes. Sometimes, they even watched grazing animals eat mouthfuls of clay to successfully soothe an upset stomach. Yes, our ancient ancestors literally ate dirt. It is called geophagy, and certain types of natural clays actually absorb dangerous toxins right out of the gut. So eating mud wasn't just a weird toddler phase, it was completely legitimate, life-saving medicine. But things get so much weirder when you closely examine some of our early surgical procedures. Hold on to your skulls for this next one. Literally. One of the absolute oldest medical procedures in the entire world is known as trepanation. That is just a fancy, scientific word for deliberately drilling a hole into a living person's head. Archaeologists have found thousands of ancient skulls with perfectly round, gaping holes violently scraped into them. Why on earth would anyone ever agree to do that? Maybe you had a terrible migraine, or maybe the local shaman thought evil spirits were trapped inside your brain. The craziest part of this story is not that they actually performed the surgery. The absolute craziest part is that the surrounding bone clearly shows significant signs of healing. People actually survived having huge holes scraped into their skulls with dull, unsterilized rocks. Our ancestors were just incredibly, undeniably tough. They also use live, wriggling maggots to carefully clean out heavily infected, rotting wounds. I know it sounds absolutely, nauseatingly disgusting. But maggots only eat dead, necrotic tissue, leaving the healthy pink flesh perfectly intact. Modern hospitals actually use this exact same gross technique today for treating incredibly stubborn, antibiotic-resistant infections. So a grimy caveman wielding a handful of bugs was basically practicing highly advanced modern medicine. What about catastrophic injuries like broken bones? If you snapped your leg in the harsh wilderness, you were usually a hungry predator's very next snack. But we have astonishing fossil evidence showing completely healed human femurs from tens of thousands of years ago. A healed femur means someone had to stay with you, feed you, and fiercely protect you while you slowly recovered. It proves that the greatest survival tool we ever had wasn't a magic plant or a perfectly sharpened rock. It was community. We survived the terrifying ancient world strictly because we aggressively took care of each other. Now, let's quickly talk about the biggest elephant in the prehistoric room: life expectancy. You have probably heard that ancient humans only lived to be a pathetic 30 years old. That is actually a huge, wildly misunderstood statistical myth. The mathematical average was dragged way down by extremely high infant and childhood mortality rates. Being a helpless baby in the brutal Stone Age was arguably the most dangerous job on the entire planet. But if you made it past puberty, your overall chances of living into your 60s or 70s were remarkably good. You were highly active all day, every single day. You ate a lean diet of organic, grass-fed meat and fibrous, unrefined wild plants. There was no highly refined sugar, no ultra-processed junk food, and definitely no sitting hunched at a desk for 8 hours. Because of this active lifestyle, ancient humans almost never suffered from modern chronic diseases like diabetes or heart disease. They were absolutely ripped, incredibly fit, and surprisingly healthy. Sure, a stealthy saber-toothed tiger might easily get you, or a tiny little cut might quickly turn into a lethal infection. But you certainly weren't going to suddenly die of a massive heart attack at 50. Our resilient ancestors made it through sheer grit, amazing communal support, and the Earth's wild, natural pantry. So next time you instantly pop a tiny painkiller for a mild, annoying headache, take a second to appreciate how easy you actually have it. You definitely don't have to desperately chew on bitter tree bark. You don't have to stuff your bleeding cuts full of damp swamp moss. And thankfully, nobody is aggressively trying to drill a giant hole in your head with a sharp piece of flint. Medical science has obviously come a remarkably long way. But the human body's absolute, stubborn will to survive has been completely undefeated since day one.